All right, hey everyone. We're gonna get started now. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
We had lovely slides, but they're only for us now.
They're only for
They're
us.
secret slides.
So, welcome to our panel, Real Talk, the Creative Experience with MAGFriends.
We're all MAGFriends now.
Yeah,
We're all
everyone
friends
all
now.
in this room
MAGFriends.
is now a mag friend.
And we will have real talk about the creative experience. So I'm gonna open with a question. How does it feel to be at MAGFest?
Yeah.
Yay! Lukewarm. All right, let's take it.
Right?
You're working on it.
Okay. Thank you.
So we really, we wanted to make this an interactive panel. We wanted to give everyone an opportunity to express yourself somehow. So one of the ways that we invite you to do that is to get on Twitter if you have that on your phone and tweet us using the hashtag #RealTalkAtMagFest, which you can't see, but maybe you can just remember that, #RealTalkAtMagFest. You can also @tag me, I'm Diodes Music. And just tell us, how does it feel to be at MAGFest, in your words? So we're going to ask you to, I guess, like participate, and if you want to.
Right.
Participation is optional. Nobody should feel pressured or anything. And in all of your interactions here and in MAGFest, please be respectful, and everywhere else in life too, right? So why are we here? Let's just talk a little bit about what this panel is. I had the idea for this panel partly because I've been thinking about how in this day and age with social media and the internet and everything, we are really used to hearing about other people's creative accomplishments and successes, and when things are going well creatively. And that's kind of what we tend to talk about in the social media world. But there's more to the story than that, right? There's a lot more to the story. And the truth is, I believe that creativity is actually hard. And there's a lot of stuff about that that is difficult. And I think we need to talk about the other aspects, kind of like the less unsexy aspects of the creative process. That is not my screen.
But it is a screen, so we're making progress.
And so, yeah, we just want to talk about these things. If, maybe if I'm struggling with something and I open up about it, I'll find out that other people are struggling with the same thing, and I'll feel less alone in my struggles.
Yeah, you're not alone.
And we're here to kind of encourage you. We want to talk about our own experiences, what we've learned along the way, and just inspire you. And we also want to give you an opportunity to meet and connect with other people and continue the conversation beyond even here and MAGFest. So I guess the agenda for today, each of us panelists have prepared a topic that we're going to talk about. After the panelist topics, we'll have a brief Q&A where you can ask us questions. And then at the end, I hope you stay till the end, because I think that's going to be the best part, is letting you start your own conversations and mingle and I don't want to say the word networking, but it's basically like networking. By the way, that's the purpose of the name tags. So in addition to just writing your name, you can get more name tags that show your interests and what you do. So if you want to look like this with a bunch of name tags, you can tell everyone what it is you're interested in. The whole purpose of that is to kind of like help everyone more easily find other people who share their interests and start conversations and all that good stuff.
So if you miss name tags for your projects and your interests, you can head back over there and grab them by that big cardboard stand thingy. It's in the middle.
I literally don't know where the slides are at this point, because I think they're being projected somewhere we can't see.
I would just unplug it and go back to.
I think I have to.
There you go.
Okay, so who are we? There's a slide here that says who are we. I'm not just like saying random stuff. Before we introduce ourselves, I just want to say that we're just like basically regular people who love creating, and we're passionate about what we do. We've been doing it for a while. We just want to talk about our experiences. We're not necessarily here because we're the most famous, notable, whatever people, even though you all are wonderful. But my philosophy is just like, we're all on the path somewhere, and we all have something that we can learn from each other. So my name is Amy Shea. I am, what does my name tag say? I'm a musician. I'm a pop rock songwriter, instrumentalist person. Any musicians here, by the way? Want to make some noise? Musicians? Yeah. Yay!
I'm like a musician on Thursdays.
I'm also a web developer for the Washington Post. So do we have anyone that works in software? Software! Yeah! All right. And then what else do I have? Hip-hop dancer, fashion designer, whatever. Go ahead.
I'm Andrew, known online as OA, or Oceans Andrew. And I do a lot of stuff, but I am a musician and designer, artist. I do a lot of stuff, so that's all I do.
My name is Jeremy. I suppose I would say I'm primarily a musician. I produce drum and bass, like specifically as a genre, but I also do mixing and mastering. I've been doing that since I was like 15, and I've had a lot of interesting run-ins along the way doing that, so I have some insights along that path.
Hey, I'm Jenner. I write words. On this panel, we have like a spectrum of qualification, and then I'm like the bottom, like, of that spectrum, that tier.
No. Unacceptable.
Oh. Shaggy and I are making a game.
Full screen that.
So you're also a game developer.
Kind of.
You forgot to mention that part.
I'm an idea person.
Well, my name is Stephen Kelly, and I guess I would say I'm a podcaster. I actually host the Overclocked Remix podcast. And I also have on my name tag that I'm a writer, because I like to write stories sometimes.
We got it.
Oh!
We got it.
Thank you, everyone, for clapping for me in my intro.
Sorry.
That's my whole intro. Hi.
Okay. What are we doing? So, what's on your name tags? Feel free, if you have Twitter, get on Twitter and tell us who you are, introduce yourselves, and let us know what you do. We'll be interested to hear that. I don't know if we have Wi-Fi. I think it's just gonna
we were told that there would be no internet here, so you'd have to use your 4G. We're sorry if your data is evil. Oh no. Talk to me. Talk to us after the panel. I'll talk to you.
We want to hear from you. So come up to us afterwards. I think that's it for the intro, so we can get to the fun part, the panelist topics. So we're going to start with Stephen.
That's me. All right, I can do that. Okay, so I thought this name up like on the airplane, so don't judge me too hard. I'm calling it You Have No Idea What's Going to Happen Next, and that's a good thing because, well, I didn't really write an intro for this, so I'm going to start with a question. How many people here have an interest or a hobby or a job they really like that goes beyond their main stated interest, the first thing they would put on their name tag? Like for me, I've got writer here, I've got podcaster here, but I also like to doodle weird pictures and write music sometimes. So like just by show of hands, how many people here have any kind of extra hobby, no matter how small? That's a lot of hands. Now, I will say, for that special person who knows exactly what they love to do, and they do it every day and they do it well, good on you. That is amazing. I am so envious of you. But I feel like a lot of us take quite a lot of time to sort what we do like from what we don't like. And that was definitely the case for me. And I read on Yahoo Answers that you should put like a personal anecdote in these kinds of panels. So let's go back to my childhood. And if anyone has a harp, let's play that now. So when I was a kid,
Wait, we have to wait for the sepia tone to set in. Okay, go.
So when I was a kid, I had a lot of free time. I had pretty cool parents who were very encouraging of whatever I wanted to try, and I had a brother who would do he'd sign on to any crazy invention that I could think of. So we spent a lot of time just making silly creative projects. I mean, the pile is enormously high, but I just wrote a few down here that I think kind of give you a picture of it. First one, writing video game walkthroughs that frequently broke down into stand-up comedy material. Creating and moderating an online message board that consisted entirely of our invisible friends, and recording an extended Let's Play of The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind on 150 analog cassette tapes. So we had a lot of bad ideas going, but no one was there to tell us they were bad ideas. As I grew up, I started focusing a little more on what I was good at, in parentheses. The ones with potential, as they say. And I put so much time into those that I got a bit of tunnel vision going on. And when those projects started to struggle, so did I, and I panicked. And I would start throwing fuel on the fire, trying to keep them going. I can't let them die now. I put so much time in, and that becomes a perpetual cycle. The more time I put into it, the more panicked I become, and those doubts eventually rise to the surface. What if I'm not good at this at all? What if I've wasted all of my time up till now? Or worse, what if that's what they want me to think, and this is what I should be doing, and everything else in life is a distraction? So eventually, I had to admit to myself, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know why I'm doing it. But then it dawned on me, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know why I'm doing it. And that was a huge relief. Like, I finally realized I didn't have to have everything figured out. Like, I could experiment with smaller little projects, and if they failed, fine, I'd do another one after that. And if that one failed, I'd just do another one after that. And it was kind of like being a kid again, actually. And it took me a lot longer to learn that than I thought it would. So this was such an important and groundbreaking revelation to me that I wrote it down on a slide, and it's on a screen, which is you have no idea what's going to happen.
That makes it real.
Yeah, exactly. We almost didn't have the screen, so that joke wouldn't have worked as well. But yeah, it's the same idea. You don't know, you have no idea what's going to happen, and that's a good thing. And it can be a scary thing, but I think it's well worth it when you realize that any wonderful, wild, magical, unexpected person or event or project could pop up. This is a great example. I did not plan to be on a panel at MAGFest. I just kept talking to people that I liked and admired and kept going to things that I thought fit me, and something cool happened. So that's my thing. I have a little bit of time, so I'm going to finish off with my friend about Steve Vai. So who here knows who Steve Vai is? Okay, he's not actually my friend. I just like to say that. Steve Vai is, for those of you who don't know, a legendary guitarist. He is like top tier in his field, as it were. In his mid-30s, he just decided to become a beekeeper. His wife had a garden, and they had bees in the wall, and so it became very well pollinated, and he's like, you know, it's time for a Steve Vai hobby. And so he just became a beekeeper and has been doing it for 20 years and is now a master of the craft. There is no way Steve Vai planned to be a beekeeper. That did not happen, but it did. And I just think that makes me very happy. That's literally all I have to offer.
Yay!
Thank you. Good job. Yeah.
Dude, now I want to be a beekeeper. That sounds awesome.
I know.
You never know.
I watched a video, and he had the whole suit on, and they were following his family around, and he's making honey. It was great.
So I have something very dangerous to talk to you all about. This is a misconception that makes people who are creative despondent, and it is the myth of inspiration. And that's kind of clickbaity, but that was funny to me. So anyways, inspiration is very real. However, the myth is that you need inspiration to produce good work. And so I just kind of want to focus on what works for me when it comes to producing something that you're proud of or have fun with. Oftentimes discipline trumps inspiration. And I want to just share some cool things that are fun and also clickbaity it works for a lot of different things. It doesn't necessarily have to apply to a single craft. And so the first one is great for literally anything, and that is timer practice and progressive overload. And what that is pushing yourself a little further each time, and it can be with really small increments starting. So say you're doing it like you're painting or you're drawing or you're working on music or you're writing. And for anything that's creative, oftentimes the hardest thing is just getting started. And so having like your phone timer or like an egg timer or anything, start with 1 minute. Do it for 1 minute and then take a break. The next time, set it for 1.5 minutes. And each time you do it, you set it for higher and you take a break. And eventually, you'll just not stop. Like once you get started and that difficult hurdle, it's much easier to say, oh, I just need to do this for 1 minute. It's like brushing your teeth. You know, it's super simple. Anyone can do it. And once you get past that, then you can really let things go. And so eventually, you know, you do like a 15 minutes on, 15 minutes off, and you know, you can get a lot more done just by having that sort of discipline. And discipline sounds like it's really difficult to achieve, but if you start in small chunks, anyone can do it, and it takes. It doesn't even take discipline to start doing discipline because you start in small enough sections that is manageable. Second one is, this is sort of like a way to warm up, and it's best for writing because you can get some cool stuff, but you can also do it for other things too. It's just a little more challenging. And I kind of practice with these guys ahead of time. And so what we're doing with the round robin, if you're kind of stuck on ideas, if you have some people around, we're gonna write a 1-sentence story, and we're just gonna do it 1 word at a time. And whatever I start up with, it's going to end up very different because of all the extra input. And then that kind of can get ideas going. I'll start with, and we'll go me, and we'll Steve, and we'll just kind of go clockwise, I guess. We'll just go down the line here, and I'll start. So the first word of the story is yesterday.
My
Daughter. Haha.
Chased.
Pants.
Again?
Always pants.
Always pants.
Away, yeah, I don't know. I want to keep it like at least PG-13, but this could go.
That's,
all right.
yeah.
Hey, but anyway, you can see how that
Abandoned thought.
that specific sentence or even like concept, it would not be something that I would think of on my own, but because there's different inputs, you can have different sort of like angles that you attack something.
I suddenly have this great idea for a novel.
I know,
I'm
right?
going to start writing it right now.
That was an especially tricky one because we had to be careful about Andrew's fictitious daughter.
Yeah, and it's, you know what, and I appreciate the respect. She
Yeah,
does
of course.
too. The third one actually is really fun, and it's super easy. Also, it kind of goes with the theme of progressive overload, the rule of threes, and it could be anything. As an example for writing, it's basically a warm-up where you have so you're working on your story that you have. You have this cool idea for a story. To warm up, you write a completely separate story, but you only do 3 sentences every day. But you have to do it every day. And so over time, you have something cool that's really unique. It allows you to get maybe some crazy ideas out and then look at them objectively on the page. Because oftentimes the hardest thing is just starting. If it's drawing, it could be something as like either you set a timer, or it could be something as small as like you're drawing a tree. Every day you draw 3 leaves, and over time that tree is going to blossom. But it's pretty cool. It's all about taking things in small chunks and not feeling pressure to produce as much. Because once you start and you get things moving, that's when you can you just feel like you're already on track. And so having a warm-up is really important.
Andrew, can I butt in here for a second? So I'm thinking about those warm-ups you're talking about, and I suddenly remembered that back when I did a lot of writing, I did those exact same exercises. I wrote one thing every single day, no matter how I felt. And most of them were really, really, really bad, but one of them turned out to be the core of a story that I continued writing for 2 years, and I'm still working on. So it works.
Yeah, and it's fun too, and it's creating in a zero pressure environment for yourself, where it's almost like if you're a musician and you're going to be performing or you be playing, you'll play some scales to warm up. It's sort of like that, but for different types of things. And the very last one is create a toolbox of prefabs, and that could be all kinds of stuff. So going back to the tree analogy, you could have maybe your roots already drawn, and each time you like work on something, you start with those same roots, and you just change the trunk, you change something else, and you can, then you have a lot of different options, and you can pick stuff. Or if you're doing music, like when I'm producing something, I'll have like, this is my general rock template, but it's super open-ended. So I have, my drums, my bass, guitar, and maybe like some sort of piano or synth. But from that like foundation, I can go in any other direction, and I don't have to worry about getting everything set up right away. But the main point I want to kind of emphasize is that getting started is often the hardest thing, and building discipline is much better in the long run, and then creating things in small chunks than waiting for inspiration to strike. 'Cause when you have it, it's like a cheat code. You can just like, you feel like you're really motivated and you don't need to work because you're feeling super inspired. But you can't always rely on that. So having discipline to push through when it's harder, it's good to have some tools to help you there, because otherwise it gets to be too much work.
Yay. Hey.
Thank you. There's actually a whole other slide here. Maybe if you're interested in easy ways that even you can do to build these skills, talk to Andrew afterwards.
Yeah,
there's more to it.
Too much time. But
I think we need to move on.
Remember
at
to
this
hydrate.
point,
yeah,
though.
I believe so too.
Sorry. So, Jenner's
Hey,
next.
guys. So I got a lot to say. I'm going to talk a little fast, but hopefully not too fast. And before I begin, I just want to say that while I am going to be treading carefully, I am going to be mentioning mental illness and talking about it. And this might be triggering for some people, no matter how delicately I go about talking about it. So I've been fighting with mental illness all my life. And because of this, I want to talk about the two of many that I battle every day that I feel most deeply impact my creative process: anxiety and depression. I'm also going to talk about writer's block. For me, anxiety manifests itself as this nervousness, kind of restlessness, this feeling of vulnerability and exposure, and it really sucks. But it's the negative thoughts that really affect me the most. Are you, like me, endlessly assailed by thoughts that you are a hack and that your work is awful and garbage, and thus, by extension, you are garbage? That really sucks. What can you do about that? For me, my doubts and insecurities are amplified by my anxiety, but one solution that is actually, that has worked, kind of, is something that I've always kind of wrestled with as a disabled person, which is the simple fact that I'm more than what I can do and produce, and so are you. That I have inherent value as a person without needing to be conventionally useful, and the same goes for you. If it was easy as knowing that, that I'm a decent, loved, worthy person, so are you, to shake the grip of these thoughts, then I wouldn't be here. But I've never really been able to rationalize myself out of irrationality. But here's what has worked for me when I start having these thoughts. The first thing is to just think of anything else. You can be productive by thinking of story ideas or the tasks you need to do the next day. Warning, this might stress you out. Or heck, you don't have to be productive. You can think about things you like about your pets or what you're gonna wear. If you're feeling ambitious, you can make a list of things that you like about yourself, because that will be useful to come back to when you're when you're in a place of distress. Second thing that's worked for me is I used to, when I was a teenager, listen to music to get my mind off of bad things, and it works just as well now that I'm dubiously an adult. You can watch streams or Let's Plays or binge a show. Distraction just really helps getting my mind off of these negative thoughts. Additionally, watching people play video games or tabletop games sometimes gives me ideas for stories I want to tell. The best trick, though, and I'm not joking, has been to listen to an earworm song and get it stuck in my head. Sure, now I can't stop singing Magical Trevor to myself, but at least I'm not thinking about how much I suck. Next, depression. For me, the hardest thing about depression is just getting going at all. Just getting started, period, is just so much effort. Depression has this way of making things seem or feel like they are so much bigger than they really are, and it causes tasks to take so much more energy than maybe they should, and I'll come back to that. The next hardest thing about depression for me is to just keep going after I've actually finally gotten started. So what do I do about it? Well, first, and Amy's going to go into this more in detail, stop comparing yourself to other people. Remember that thing I said just a few moments ago about tasks taking more energy than they should? That was bad. There is no should with depression. Stuff takes the energy that it takes for you. And what it takes for you is fine. If it takes less energy and it's less work and it's less tiring for somebody else, good for them. That's on them, not on you. It's not a competition, folks. You need to do what you can do for you and not run yourself ragged trying to keep up with others. You're the best at being you. They're the best at being them. You're not them. They're not you. My tips, basic stuff. Start with hygiene. Take a shower, brush your teeth. It's much easier to feel good about yourself when you've done that. Feed yourself, and if you have medication, take it. Then feed and water pets, and then prioritize chores that have a knack of piling up and becoming too much. Like, for example, the dishes. To me, nothing is more intimidating and demoralizing than walking into the kitchen and seeing a full sink full of dishes that have been piling up for a week. Remember when you're doing this kind of stuff to always do something for you. Play with your pets, go for a walk, play Fire Emblem. It helps to reinforce a good routine and build good habits and reward yourself in this way. Anyway, I'm running out of time, so writer's block.
Sorry, I flipped there like 3 minutes ago.
Shit. Okay, here are my tips for writer's block. I like to pick a song or three that represents a character in my story and an aspect of my world and listen to it. This has been really useful in motivating me to start writing.
Can I interject with just a brief, it's funny because I do kind of like the converse thing for writing music, where I'll like draw upon fiction and then try to inspire myself to write a song about like a story that was inspiring to me. So
yeah.
It works both ways.
Yeah. I'll read advice columns and then think about how my characters react to that situation or what advice they would give to the person. And this works. Sometimes I'll fill out personality questionnaires or dating profiles as the character. This not only helps me write them better, but it often helps me get writing. Just remember to not actually create a real dating profile for your lesbian murder pope. Just don't.
Unless you're Steve-O.
Oh.
I've mentioned this before, but sometimes just consuming other creative content, like watching an LP or a video game stream, or even playing a tabletop game myself, which I call parallel creativity, can get my brain churning with ideas. And finally, if you're fortunate enough to have long-suffering friends or an amazing spouse like I am, you can ramble at them about your project while they pray for the sweet release of death. I mean, ask questions, talk about it, and give critique. Critique rules, by the way. I don't have enough time to talk about it, but ask me about critique after this panel if you're interested. In closing, be kind to yourself. Forgive yourself. Love yourself, because you are a person deserving of kindness, forgiveness, and love. And whatever reasons you have to not be creating, they're wrong. Taking time for you is good, and there's always a time to do that. But if there's only one thing you take away from me tonight, I want it to be to reject the idea that you don't have a story worth telling and that every story worth telling has already been told. That's nonsense, because nobody has lived your life, and thus nobody can tell your stories but you. And your stories are worth telling. They are valuable and meaningful. Chances are, right now, there's somebody out there who needs to hear it, see it, read it, etc. Even in the extremely unlikely event that there isn't somebody out there who wants what you're producing, it still matters. It's still important because you're important. Your ideas, your stories, your experience matter because they matter to you, and you matter. Look, I want to read your stories, play your games, hear your songs, watch your films, etc. So create, because nobody else is going to write your story.
Thank you, Jenner. That was beautiful. I only wish you said it faster. I'm just kidding. I think there was an audience question at some point. I didn't want to interrupt you, but was there an audience question? Or? Thank you.
The truth is, I put Niles on the front line 100% of the time, and I've never regretted it once. Thanks.
Fire Emblem is a metaphor for a lot of things, but that's another panel for another day.
I don't think that's long enough.
Only an hour and a half? Jeez.
We're going to have to cut her off.
All
All right, so Jeremy is next with the beauty of failure.
Yeah, embrace the suck.
You will also have to speak quickly.
I will speak as quickly as I possibly can, really. All right. So I guess here's where I try to make a compelling case for why failure is valuable. And this might go spectacularly wrong, which would mean I fail. So I guess
Art in
I'd
action.
start by asking, like, has anybody ever found value out of failing at something? So pretty much everybody.
And you can tell your story on Twitter with the hashtag, so we can hear it later.
Right. So like then I might not have to make like too large of a case here, so I'll keep this rather quick. I guess my thoughts on it, like after like achieving relative levels of success within a few fields and then kind of eventually backing off and really not being super creatively productive after a long period of time. I realized how much of my struggle with being creative and continuously creating things is just an abject fear of failure. Like just the pure terror of me starting a project and not finishing it is enough to like oftentimes like make me just not even want to start it. And I realized that a lot of the reasons that I was having these fears is like I wasn't really in the proper context. So I would first say that one of the most useful things about failure is it kind of forces you to give yourself a context. It's a diagnostic tool in a way. Like, so for instance, if you were this is probably the quickest example that I could think of. Let's say you're writing like a novel, right? Like a really long book, and you're getting like maybe halfway through it, you don't know where you're going, and it's just not, everything's not coming together, and you're not enjoying it anymore. You're just like finding out that this is really not working out for you. Like maybe this is habitually a problem. Well, another way to look at it is, are you still in the same place that you were at when you first started that project? Like, are you still really trying to write a full novel? Like, is that really where you want to be? Or maybe you're actually a
Jeremy,
short story author.
I'm right here. You don't have to drag me. I'm literally sitting right next to you.
Maybe you've been stuck on that one Fire Emblem level for 4 days.
Okay, let me rephrase this. You can start projects, realize it's not going anywhere, and that's a useful tool to know that maybe you've evolved over time, because some projects take a long time. Steve-O.
So, like, you start working on a song, and you have a particular genre or structure in mind. You try to do it, and it fails spectacularly. You start again, and you approach it differently. And, yeah, you're still at the beginning, but if you have a different idea, and it goes better, then you learn from your failure, and you make improvements and move forward.
Sure, that kind of dovetails into the next thing I was going to say, where it's actually kind of a secret weapon in a way. But I guess what the main thing that I'm trying to get at, because I'm just going to cut to the chase on this, you might realize that you're not willing to put in all the time that is absolutely required to get to that final goal. Whether it just be something changed during the process of you creating it, or like you really didn't think through like what it entailed. If you were trying to be a rock star when you were a kid, maybe at some point like you realized, you know what, you don't want to spend your life in a touring van, like, or on a bus, or like in airplanes all the time, living in hotels, if you're lucky. Like, I mean, if you're like Red Hot Chili Peppers lucky. So it's, things change, that's okay. You need to be able to acknowledge those things, take something from it, and be able to move on. And that's a very useful tool, to be able to know that that's a positive thing, that just is just a reappraisal of where you're trying to go and where you're trying to be. So that brings me to the second aspect of it, where it's kind of a secret weapon. Just a really good tool, and I'm going to just apply this to my trade, which is music production, in which like the genre I do is like very focused on trying to like innovate. You're trying to do some really tough technical things. So like the idea of fast failing things is an extremely useful tool. Like if you try to even just imitate something that you find to be spectacularly amazing, like this is like, if you can get to this level, like this is where you'd want to be. You try to do something like that. You try to put that together. You try to see what comes out, and then you're going to start to find out where you fall short. That's going to be the quickest way for you to be able to essentially learn where your weaknesses are, figure out what you do and don't like to do when it comes to the process of these things. And it'll just like evolutionize you way faster than if you were just moving along without any kind of outside processes going on. It's just a useful tool. Like you go into something that's way above your level, knowing that you're going to fail at it in some way, and then you essentially use that. You take away something that is positive from that. I think I'm probably way over time, so I'm just going to go ahead and stop.
Thank you, Jeremy. So I had this whole thing prepared, but I really started like feeling like it was garbage. Because I'm having like.
But you're going to learn from this.
This is like your territory.
Yeah.
How dare you? How dare you step on my brand?
I guess in some ways I had some serious imposter syndrome about making the panel, the idea of the panel, the idea that there are people in front of me at my panel, and what I was going to say at the panel. I had a lot of doubts as to whether this would really connect with anyone. But, so, and then I had all these points that I don't even want to go through in order or anything. I think what I was just trying to say here, like if I want to get to the point of it, is that, you know, it was like I was saying at the beginning of the panel. We're so used to talking about our own successes and like kind of making things look like they're going well on social media and on the internet. It's kind of like the way that we interact. And I think collectively it kind of starts to paint a distorted picture of reality. And when we look at social media, it can kind of have an effect on us because we are looking at the best side of everyone and we're comparing our real selves to that. So maybe you've ever had a moment, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand or say it necessarily, but you can think to yourself, maybe you've ever had a moment that you were on social media and you saw something that somebody was doing and you kind of felt a little bad about yourself, like, I wish I was doing that. I wish I was that awesome. You know, that kind of like comparing and judging yourself negatively. And I've been there. And maybe you felt like you wanted to look successful because everybody else looks successful and you want to be the loser that's like not, you know, having the totally perfect looking life or anything. Thus kind of feeding into that. And maybe you've ever worried about whether your post, or not just your post, but your creative accomplishments would get likes or any attention or anything like that. And you know, it can feel kind of vulnerable putting yourself out there. And another thing that happens is we see so much success when people create things and accomplish things that are kind of like cool. And you know, I think that it can be kind of a distraction. It's like, oh, this person is doing this like really cool thing. I want to be cool too. I want to do that also. This happened to me a lot in like when I was younger. You know, there were YouTube stars. I was a musician. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to do what they're doing. I'm going to make lots of YouTube videos, and then I'll be famous too, or whatever. It was just like really misguided thinking. So I guess I call that getting lost in someone else's path. I've been there. It's taking someone else's path, I've found, is a good way to get lost.
I get like that sometimes with my writing too. Like if Ready Player One can get published, why can't I? You know?
And the kicker is a lot of the time you only see that publication. You see that one tweet. You don't see all the stuff that it took to get there.
Yeah.
You don't see the graveyard of failure.
Yeah.
Well put, thank you.
Graveyard of Failure is actually my Steam username, so.
So my point is not that like social media is horrible and we should burn it or anything, but I'm just trying to say that if you ever had any of those kinds of experiences, that you are not alone, and I want to talk about that, so to kind of like make the not aloneness more open, and to talk about what kind of helps me and how I've changed to overcome some of those feelings. So what it comes down to me, I think, is just, you know, some version of run your own race, be yourself, do you, whatever it is. How do you actually do that? I say fall in love with the process, because the process is how you get to the end goal, and it's how you're going to spend most of the time anyway. Maybe there's some kind of like shiny prize at the end, and that's what we're always seeing. But there's a whole process that leads up to that. And if you work hard on something and you love what you do, then that in itself is its own reward. And if you put in that effort, you can also celebrate your effort, because it's the only part that you can control. Once you put it out into the world, maybe people love it, maybe people hate it. Maybe the record labels will take your album, maybe the publishers will take your book, maybe they won't. But if you tried and you worked hard at that, then that right there is the success, and you can kind of let go of the outcome. Utilize your unique strengths. If you take a close look at what you do, and the more you create, you'll kind of get to know what you do particularly well. What you do is not the same as what anyone else does. It's kind of like Jenner said, like only you can tell your own story. And that can kind of take the sting out of a comparison when you might be looking at somebody else's work and being like, oh, how come mine's not as good? But mostly I just want to say you are more than your accomplishments. So there's more, like part of the distortion in social media is like you're looking at the end result. And when you're looking at somebody else's accomplishments, that's not the whole picture of them. They have a whole life outside of that too, and so do you. And there are a lot of things in life to kind of derive a good feeling from, other things to feel good about. So if I had more time, I would get into that. But basically, I just want to say be kind to yourself, just like Jenner said. Work hard at what you love doing, and create awesome things, and feel good about that, no matter what anyone else is doing, because you can't control that anyway.
Yeah, some good advice that Amy gave to me that I can't quote word for word because it's been a year-ish and depression just eats my memory, is you work on your own timetable. Like, so what if your friend made a comic and kickstarted it and published it in a couple months and your comic is still like not finished? That doesn't matter. You're on your own timetable is basically what she said, and you're working at your own pace, and it's not about them. So yeah, you told me that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was you.
Did I say that?
Yeah, you did.
So, you know, hopefully these things make you feel better, but also I hope that it inspires you to create more too, because when we feel bad about ourselves and bad about our creativity and have all those doubts, it can be kind of like a blocker and, you know, stamp out the creativity. So that was what I really hoped to do by putting this panel together, is to have us talk about these things, bring them out in the open, and kind of give you some ideas that you might take with you and use in your own creative practice, give you something to think about. So I think we have time for like a question. And I saw a question on Twitter that I thought was interesting. I really like this question, so I wanted to go down the panel and maybe have us all answer this. So somebody's asking, for whatever made you qualified to sit on this panel, did you know when you started it that it would take you where it did? I'm speaking now, so I'll just answer the question. The answer is definitely, absolutely no. I did not know that I would be sitting here on this panel, like talking about this stuff, but that turns out to be what I'm passionate about, that I feel like it's important to talk about these things, and I would not have gotten here if I hadn't have a lifetime of trying to work on music and art and everything else. And all that stuff has taken me to places I never would have even imagined. And when I was younger, I might have had like some rigid idea of what it means to be a musician. Maybe it means like being a rock star and you have to do things like a certain way. But when I opened myself up to what was around and like, you know, saw the opportunities and the circumstances I was in, then, you know, it took me to great places, more than I could even imagine.
Yeah, I think that sort of question, I think anyone in this room could potentially be on this side of the table right now. And
Agreed.
like, I think that's just, everyone's creative journey is different, and it's about the journey. You know, every once in a while you get some output, but it's more about, you know, enjoying the art of creating something. And I think, you know, what I've seen now and what I'm talking about now might be different than me 10 years ago or me 10 years from now.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I would say, right, I'm no more qualified than anyone else. It's just like, I feel like I have talent in certain things, but I mean, a lot of people have like talent in things. Probably all of you have talent in things. Like how people get to a level of success, that's all relativistic anyway. A lot of that has to do with tenacity. I don't really care or I don't think anybody should really care like where their level is, so to speak. We all think introspectively about our art, and or at least I'd make the argument that we should. And when we do that, I think there's a lot to be gained. Like, it's really easy to just kind of put your head down and just kind of work on things kind of blindly. But I guess when Amy came up with the idea to create this panel, it forced me, who I was actually doing that at the time, to really think about where I was at and where I really wanted to be, and like what my habits were, and like how I could change that and what was valuable. I think failure is the thing that I came upon because I was trying to figure out why I didn't feel like I was being super productive. And I had diagnosed that as the reasoning. So I guess it was just like a moment of introspection that anybody's really capable of if you're willing to put the time in. So that's it.
Hey, I don't know about these losers. I'm a star, and I belong on every panel.
Yeah, Jenner! Woo!
No, but seriously, for real, you too could be up here biting your fingernails on camera. I have had a really, really, really crappy life. I wrote a memoir, and I tried pressing it out to some people, and all the people who looked at it was like, "This is not true. You're making this up. This is ridiculous." And many times people have asked me if you could go back, if you could change a thing or two, would you do it? And I have to say, places where I've harmed people, I would love to go back and redo that, but we don't have a time machine, and we can't do that. And the truth is, all those mistakes, all those failures, all those hard times in my life made me who I am today. To quote Illidan Storm Rage, I am my scars, and that's important. Warlords of Draenor was a disappointment, and I have opinions. Anyway, my point is that no matter what you're doing in your life, and no matter what life does to you, the most important thing that you can do is survive it and endure. And don't make enduring this beautiful, glorious, beautiful, wonderful thing. Enduring is just a thing that you do. It's not. This isn't some inspiration porn story or whatever. It's just a thing that you have to do to keep going. Because no matter what, this will pass. This will pass, and something new will come up, and it will keep going. No matter how much you stay in place, time moves around you, and you just have to keep going. Because if you don't, then it wins. And at least if you keep going, then you both lose.
Steven, so did you know that you would end up where you are from when you started?
So I guess the best way I can answer this question, you have no idea what's going to happen next, and that's a good thing. When I was a child, I had a brother.
Do we have a question? Oh, sure. So, basically, I'll go through these very quickly. Less is more is sort of like you don't need to start necessarily with something big to build discipline. Starting with 30 seconds is great. Create a space, and that's sort of like have your space be creative. That could be a corner somewhere. It could be you clear off the kitchen table, and that's like your space temporarily. But something without a lot of distractions is good. Give yourself mulligans. Like if you are on track for building, you had 30 seconds. You go to a minute. You go to minute 30. You get up to like 10 minutes, and then you something happens. You miss a week. That's fine. Allow yourself to fail. Drink more water. I just think that everyone should just drink more water. Generally, people are dehydrated, and the more water
but
you
not
drink,
raw water. That will kill you. Don't.
Yeah, no,
don't,
definitely.
No.
There's stipulations.
All right.
We have 5 minutes.
We have 5 minutes left.
But no.
I think at this point, I kind of want to wrap things up.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. We really
so
appreciate you here. We were going to have like a meet and greet kind of hangout thing afterwards. We could talk to each other and stuff like that. We can still kind of do that because there's about 30 minutes before the next panel moves in. So if you want to do that, and then you can meet us in the soapbox because I believe it's called the soapbox because nobody goes in there, and I might recite some poetry if you want.
Yay. And so the other thing is if you want a name tag, you can get a name tag, and then whenever you run into somebody else with a name tag at MAGFest anywhere, it's an opportunity to connect on something. And yeah, I agree. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, panelists. I don't know why I put my Twitter there. Nobody else did. You can tweet me. Thank you also, Jarrell, Kaiser, and Dia for helping out. Thank you, MAGFest, and you. Thank you. So yes, please stay, hang around, come talk to us, come talk to each other, tell us about what you do.
I'm
We
going to come
want to
down
hear
there
it.
so that be among the people.
My feet fell asleep. I'm done.